Welcome once again to Fantasy Fiction Focus. We have a new guest today. We have Randy McCharles in Calgary. Once again, a local author just around the corner. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Simon. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. I see you've decided to advertise yourself in the background there. So you must be a writer. You've actually been writing for quite some time, haven't you?
I actually started writing in university. I was getting bored with the curriculum and all that free time you have as a university student. I started writing.
Well, I spent my free time partying, but at the university, I think I probably should have done some writing at the time. So have you? So you've always wanted to do that, or were you writing as a child or before university and things?
No, actually, I had no interest in writing. I enjoyed reading. I started reading, comic books when I was a young kid, and then moved on to novels in the school library. But in university, I got really, really ill, and I was kind of stuck in bed. And I was reading my roommates' books, and they were all horrid. And I figured I could write a better book. And that's when I started writing. I don't know if it was a better book, but that's how I got started.
Well, comic books seem to be a way forward for a lot of people. Some people never gravitate beyond that. I did the same thing. I mean, my parents, I think, were concerned, oh, he's not reading many books. I read picture books, of course, but when I started in the book stage, I was reading Marvel comics, DC comics, this sort of thing. And I think the teacher said, well, as long as he's reading something, his imagination's going, so you don't need to worry too much about it. So
actually, on comics, I think it's brilliant for kids to start reading comics, because that's where you get introduced to storyline. There may be lots of pictures, but you now get used to actually having a story happening. And then later, if you progress to text-only books, it's because you've learned to appreciate the storyline in a comic first.
Yes, and I mean that's the thing. I think with the Marvel comic in the '60s, well, you look at something like the Mighty Thor or something. Some of the storylines and the stuff going on, and that was just the Fantastic Four, the Avengers. They were very complicated stories looking back now.
Yes.
Yeah, back then. But so these are the genres. So your genres would be what, more the fantasy thing, or science fiction, or?
Yes, I actually got started reading science fiction and fantasy, and that's what I've always enjoyed most. When I actually started writing, though, I found that my mind went more in the fantasy direction than the science fiction direction, even though I enjoy reading it.
But you inject more humor into this. This is one of your hallmarks, isn't it?
Yes, I've always enjoyed humor. And when I first started writing, I did like to put in comic relief and amusing characters, and I just kind of continued on that way. And I've almost written nothing that isn't got some level of humor in it. I enjoy writing it, and I found an audience that enjoys reading it, so I'm quite happy with that.
Now, you've written, of course, novels as well, but you've had things in anthologies, short stories, and things like that, I think.
Yes, when I first started writing, of course, I tackled a novel. My first book that I actually wrote in university was like 360,000 words, much too long. But as I tried polishing something up, I discovered I just didn't have time. School, then work, life in general. And so I scaled back to short fiction just because it was something you could actually do in a reasonable amount of time. And I started entering short story contests and submitting stories to anthologies, and did quite well that way. I won some contests. I made sales to anthologies. But my heart's really in the novel. As much as I've written several dozen short pieces, I actually prefer the long form.
Now, I'm looking at the sign behind you there. Now, the Necromancer book. Now, that is, I think, classed as a novella. Now, for those people who don't know, what is a novella? It sounds like a novel, but it probably isn't.
The novella is in between a short story and a novel. So I've actually written, as I write a story, I write for its natural length. I don't know how long it's going to be when I start. So I attempted 6 novels that were short. They were like 35,000 words, too short to be a novel, but that was its natural length. That's what felt comfortable. And so I was able to actually market and sell those. The Necromancer Candle is actually a collection of 3 novellas. So there's three 35,000 word stories in there, which I pitched to a publisher say, hey, I suspect novellas are going to be more popular than they have been. How would you like to actually package three under, make it like an ace triple? Do you remember the ace doubles with two books?
Yeah,
So it's kind of like an ace triple.
Mm-hmm. So
there's actually three complete stories in that book.
Now, are the necromancers, are they all connected? The stories in the book?
They're not connected at all. They're all contemporary fantasy. The first story is from a 16-year-old girl's point of view. The second story is from a 40-something male point of view, and the third story is from a 30-something female point of view. But they're all contemporary fantasy.
Okay. Now, were those published by a publisher, or did you do those yourself?
Those are published by Edge Science Fiction and Fantasy.
Because I know you've self-published stuff as well. Now the other one behind you there is, which seems very different to sort of fantasy and science fiction, is Capone Chicago. Now, what is that about? Yeah,
so Capone Chicago is a science fiction noir novel, and I did self-publish it. A few years ago, I was asked to submit short stories and novellas to a science fiction noir serial, which I did. Then when the rights reverted back to me, I said, well, these stories taken together are okay, but they're not complete. And so I wrote a beginning, I wrote a end, and made a novel out of it. I had to move the setting. The serial that the original material went to had 4 authors contributing. And while my rights reverted to me, I was not allowed to use anything that the other 3 authors did. And so I needed to change the setting. Capone Chicago is an alternate reality where Al Capone becomes the mayor of Chicago, which I think is a better setting than the non-existent world that the original serial was doing. I was actually able to do more thematically and take a look at some things that people are familiar with in a different way. So it was a fun book to write. Most of what I write is fantasy. I have written some science fiction. Science fiction noir is kind of a blending of science fiction and mystery. So you take your gumshoe detective and throw them into a setting where there might be aliens, or in this case, androids that are the problem, and deal with social issues and human issues that way. So I had a lot of fun writing it. It is not hard science fiction where you get into, gee, how does time travel work? It's more of the soft science fiction where how do things that happen influence people, which is a different way of looking at it. And people have called that kind of soft because you're not focused on the actual how do things work, but more on the how are people affected by things that don't exist.
I think that's the thing with science fiction and fantasy sometimes. I mean, I think especially in the kids and young adult realm, people put science fiction / fantasy on the back if it's a genre. And it's like, well, I've had this question. I think it was with an adult audience, and people were saying, well, what is the difference and things? And it was difficult to explain, but I think I explained them well. I've got some time travel stories, and I think if magic is involved in traveling in time, then with some magical object or a spell book, then it's probably fantasy. But if it's a machine that has buttons and it plugs into the wall and it's technological, it's science fiction. But I really don't know. It's and where does paranormal fit into that? If you write a paranormal noir romance time travel adventures detective story, where does that fit in?
Well, there is a very popular description right now where science fiction is something that can't happen today but maybe can in the future, and fantasy is something that could never happen. Now people will argue that magic is just science we don't understand yet, so there's that argument too. But in general, if for example Capone Chicago has androids in it, well, that could happen in the future. But if it had fairy godmothers in it, people would argue, well, that's not going to happen in the future, and that would make it a fantasy instead.
Yeah, these are the sort of conversations people have at conventions and things, I suppose, and things like that. Now, the other thing is, yeah, you've got another one. You've got one coming out. It's as we don't usually mention dates on these interviews, but it's just the fall. It's officially fall just now in September. You have something coming out. The Day of the Demon is coming out this fall. What's that about?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one. This is another novel that I'm self-publishing, and it's kind of a space opera horror novel. Again, it's not my contemporary fantasy stuff, which I get published through traditional publishing, but it's something that's a departure. And the reason I'm self-publishing it is because it's based on a unpublished first draft by the brother of a friend of mine. And so trying to sell that to a publisher is tricky because it's almost like a joint author thing, but it's not really. So it's very complicated. And so I figured it's something I work in, something I like. I'm actually going to self-publish it. I have delayed the release on it. It was originally going to be this spring, but with the collapse of the Canadian dollar, self-publishing in the U.S. and then selling it in Canada is really, really tricky right now. And so I postponed it from spring to fall, figuring I'd do an ebook only in the fall. The Canadian dollar doesn't look like it's going to recover anytime soon. And so I may go ahead and do that, or I may do a spring release print and ebook, because I'm actually going down to the States in the spring, and I can get some books shipped to me there and then bring them across myself and have less of a hit on the currency exchange that way.
So with self-publishing, are you using CreateSpace, or do you use someone locally and do printing or print on demand? What do you do with your self?
I am using CreateSpace, mostly because from what I've seen so far, it's the easiest way to do it. I really want to spend my time writing, not trying to be a publisher. And so for someone who's wants to actually self-publish something and get their book out without having to open their own publishing business, it's a very fast and efficient way to go. Unfortunately, it's really optimized for the U.S. market, and if you want to actually sell physical books outside of the U.S., it's a bit trickier.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. It is. I agree that it is easy to do, but I think what's happened with it is it is mostly for, as you say, for the US market, and it's not for everyone, I don't suppose. And it does, and the shipping costs a lot of money from the US with the printed books as well. But it's still easier than, as you say, starting your own business. I don't think either of us really. I certainly don't want to be too involved in becoming a publisher. I'd rather do the writing. Now, you've also though worked with a local, smaller press with another book that came out just very recently. Much Ado About Macbeth, I think, came out in the summer, didn't it?
It came out in August. It's only been out for about 5 weeks, 5-6 weeks so far. Yes, that is my latest release. It's one I'm really proud of. Much Ado About Macbeth. It's got everything. It's got Shakespeare. It's got high school. It's got family issues. And of course, it's got lots of humor. The cover has your weird sisters and a student who is portraying Macbeth on it, and it strongly suggests humor, and that's what you're going to find when you read it. But it does deal with a lot of human issues that are serious, and there are a lot of poignant moments in the book as well.
I think yes. I think I've made the mistake. I think other people probably would make the mistake because of the cover art and because it's about high school. That it's a young adult, not a kids book, but it's a young adult or teen book. But it isn't, is it?
That's a very good question. I'm not typically a YA writer, although some short stories I sent out were rejected because the publisher thought they were YA when they weren't. But Much Ado About Macbeth, the point of view character is the drama teacher. He's in his early 40s. He's actually in a rut. He's cynical. He's trying to do what he thinks is right for his students, but has really lost his way. and the book is his journey of rediscovering himself and becoming the teacher he idolized when he was a student in high school. So if you're a teenager going, gee, I want to find some teen angst in here and deal with teen issues, you're not going to get those teen issues. You're going to get the adult issues. I do try to write everything family friendly though, so a teen reader who likes to read adult books would enjoy reading the book as well.
Okay, and of course, I presume Shakespeare is involved in this book, or at least the Scottish play, as they call it.
Yes, the drama teacher Paul, he chooses to put on a production of Macbeth for his senior high school play, forgetting that it is also the cursed play. And so the actual story is the weird sisters from the original Macbeth are cursing a high school play. Now, there's a lot in there about the supposed curse, more so than about Shakespeare himself. And there's a lot in there about how a play is actually how you actually learn to put on a play. It kind of walks through reading the script, auditioning, how do you rehearse. All that stuff happens as part of the action of the play rolling out, and how the teacher deals with his students, because of course he's getting his students to rehearse the play.
Well, don't tell us too much about it, else people won't want to buy this wonderful book.
Well, that's just, I kept halting, going, "Yeah, I can't say that because it'll give something away." So I did keep hesitating and moving on to something else.
No, don't tell us any more about it. Now, you are working on other things. I certainly hope you are. You're not just relaxing now that you've written all these books. You're doing other things.
Oh, gee, if a writer could ever relax. I actually work on multiple projects at once. I'm currently, in addition to polishing The Day of the Demon, I'm also in the final stages of another book called A Connecticut Gumshoe in King Arthur's Court, which is a Hartford, Connecticut gumshoe, not very successful, being pulled back into Camelot and dealing with issues there, again, to make his journey of actually becoming a successful gumshoe. I'm also writing a mystery novel. This summer I had a short mystery story published in AB Negative, the anthology of Canadian mystery stories. And it was very well received, and people have been saying, gee, I want to see more of your private detective. Or investigator, I shouldn't use detective, private investigator. And so I've actually started writing a novel featuring that character.
It sounds like you're going to be pretty busy over the next little while, but you're also busy in the local writing community. You do all sorts of things, which you do this great thing locally called a Taste of Local Authors, where you put on events locally with local writers, right?
Yes, I run that twice a year at the Owl's Nest bookstore in Calgary. And what I do is I find 9 authors locally, and local sometimes means Edmonton, who have new books out in that 6-month period. So the next one is on December 10th at the Owl's Nest, and there will be 9 authors with new releases since the last one, which was in May, who will be giving a very short reading and introduction of their novel. There will be some live music in between the presentations, and then lots of socializing. These events are very popular. They bring out a lot of people, and the whole idea, a Taste of Local Authors, is they will be YA, mystery, romance, speculative fiction, just a broad range of things that readers might not normally go to look at, and coming together to see what maybe Simon Rose has out in young adult. They might hear a mystery or romance novel that just came out. They go, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll look at that as well. And so it really is a way to get people to take a look at a broader offering of what local writers are doing.
Yeah, I think I noticed that too, and I was at I had the pleasure of being invited to that back in the spring because I had a book out earlier this year. And I met some people I hadn't met before who were mystery people, romance writers, whatever they that I wouldn't normally meet. But also the other big thing you do locally, of course, is When Words Collide, which is in August, which is this enormous event. So what about that? Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's kind of taken over my life. Um, um, in Calgary, I used to. Calgary writers used to have a speculative fiction convention they could attend and socialize at and discuss speculative fiction. And it ended back in 2010. And so a bunch of us were sitting there at a table going, now what do we do? We got no place to hang out. And so we decided to start a new event. And because we were writers, to focus it just on the written word. But we also decided let's make it more than just speculative fiction. Let's cover everything. Um, all of us at the table had interests outside of speculative fiction, and thought it would be really great to get writers of all kinds out and readers of all kinds out. So just like the Taste of Local Authors, where you're coming out to maybe see something that you don't normally go and look for, the When Words Collide Festival, you come out and get a little bit of everything. In 5 years, we've grown from 200 people attending to 650 people attending. And that's with the full attendance caps. We actually have to turn people away because the venue's not large enough. Um, People come from all across Canada. They come out from the United States. This year we had someone from New Zealand out. It's a 3-day event, 10 or more tracks of things to do at any one time. Really exciting. It does take a lot of my time to organize, but I do have a lot of help, and all of us feel it's a very worthwhile thing to do. So it's what we do.
Well, they certainly seem to be a much, like you say, over 600 people. I mean, it was a lot busier than the event probably the previous year, and it certainly seemed to be very successful. And most people on the Facebook page and things keep saying they can't wait for next year already. So, and that's in August. That's over. Thursday night you do something, I think, but it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, isn't it?
Yeah, we officially run from 1 o'clock Friday to 5 o'clock Sunday. But we do bring our author guests our special guests that we brought in to the Calgary Public Library on Thursday night.
And we probably mentioned that you had a very famous author who came to the event in August, didn't you?
We do all of the special guests we invite are very successful authors. With a good following. This year, probably the most sought after author we had was Diana Gabaldon. Yes. And she and the other authors sold out the Calgary Public Library on the Thursday night as well, so people couldn't get seats there. Fortunately, we do have a second reading on Friday afternoon, which is open to the public, so people who weren't able to go on Thursday, if they weren't working Friday afternoon, could come on Friday and hear them as well.
Well, it says something for an event, I think, if you can actually attract people. I mean, it's like we were mentioning before we started about the Calgary Comic Expo, which is Comic and Entertainment Expo, which has grown tremendously over the last 3 or 4 years, and some of the people that come to that are extremely well known people sometimes. So I think if you've got people like her coming and the other well known authors coming to it, obviously it's a testament to how well the event's doing and all the hard work you and your team are putting in. But you're also doing other things with other authors too. You're a big fan of retreats, aren't you? Right?
Yes. I am what I call a binge writer. A lot of writers, have 2 hours a day that they religiously write. I go for days without end, without writing a word. But then I will actually sit down and write nonstop for like 4 days. And I'll write, 30 to 40,000 words in 4 days. So retreats are a really good fit for me because that's the whole point of a writer's retreat is you take a project, you go to wherever it is, and you write. The type of retreats that I attend and what I actually put on are social retreats, where instead of a writer going off to a hut somewhere all by themselves and write, we get like 30 people together, have a common writing room for people who actually want to write together, or people can write on their own wherever, somewhere around the retreat. But the whole idea is to get people out with a project, get lots of writing done during meals, talk shop, have some social times. The retreat I run is called the Rocky Mountain Writers Retreat, which is just outside of Lake Louise Village at the Baker Creek Resort. And for that one, I like to have some evening events. If people want to take a break from writing in the evening, we'll have a talk. I've had Robert J. Sawyer out there giving presentation. I've given presentations there, or we'll have a discussion about a topic such as self-publishing. A lot of writers would have different experiences that they could share. So it's a combination social event, but let's also get a lot of writing done. And for me, it works very well. I get most of my writing done at retreats.
I think you're away from, well, you're not away from social media and email unless you want to be. You can still get those unless there's not a lot of Wi-Fi. But I think it's very important. This came up in one of the other interviews. It's very important, I think, because we do spend all our time alone. You cannot write fiction with someone else around. Well, you could, some people do, but you're in your own mind, you're in your own world. You need time alone to do that. And I think it's important to also, though, you have to go to these things like When Words Collide, retreats, just to realize that, oh, there are other people in the world I should socialize and not live in a cave and try and write this novel. So I think it's important.
Oh, exactly. Writing is a very solitary thing, but the group writing actually works. Where you get 15 authors just sitting at tables in the same room, focused writing. The exception wears earplugs. A lot of people are inspired by the tap, tap, tap of their neighbor's keyboard. I've also organized a Writers in the House event next month at the Boomtown Pub here in Calgary, where writers are going to come out for the Saturday and Sunday and write. It does work. It's actually kind of like peer pressure. It's like, gee, other people are my neighbor here is writing and getting a lot done. I should do the same. I've seen people with year-long writer's block sit down at a retreat, and because other people around them are writing, they start writing and they break through their block. It's weird. It's a weird phenomena, and I'm sure some psychologist somewhere is going to write a study on it at some point.
You might be right.
This whole social writing thing is a different thing.
It's important. I think it's very important to network with people, and there are different ways to do it. Some people have critique groups. Some people just want to go social events. Some people religiously go to conventions, especially in the science fiction and fantasy community. They're always at conventions all over the place. It's their big thing. Children's writers too actually do a lot of that traveling around. But I suppose we better wrap up here and let you get some writing done.
Yes, I've got things to do.
Yeah, me too. I've got some things to do this end. I'm trying to write 2 sequels to this book. So I should let you go. So thank you very much for your time. It's been great having you here. And wish all the best with all the things coming up. And I'm sure I will be seeing you around on the local circuit from time to time. So thank you very much for coming on.
You bet. Thank you, Simon, so much for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to watching the playback later.